how many people do you see, especially our generation? Suddenly you've got guys that maybe a year ago, they were up all weekends, sniffing till their noses couldn't any longer.
Yeah.
Now they're hiking up mountains.
Yeah.
Like this, there's a common theme. You're seeing all these people. Me, myself, I've cross-addicted into fitness.
Cool. Episode 3. Let's
Let's
go. So obviously we've had a discussion about where we wanted to take this episode. I know we want to kind of touch on some of our personal experiences a little bit more. And obviously for those that don't know, obviously, about your personal experiences, a big part of it has been battling addiction.
Yep.
And I think that in itself is something that comes with a lot of stories. It comes with a lot of interesting experiences that, many people can relate to, but also more people need to understand on a deeper level. So I wanted to start off by just asking you why you believe addiction has such a powerful hold on people, and why do you think it can dictate the essence of somebody's existence in such a way where it impacts their life the way it does?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I was in active addiction for 10 years, basically my whole 20s. My whole 20s was active addiction for a number of different things. And myself, genetic, I'm born with it. My father had it. My father died of it. And it's all consuming. It takes on every aspect of your life. And the further you go into it, the less control you have over it. But the ironic thing is the more you try and control everything and every aspect of your life. Because there becomes a part of you where you want to sustain, or regardless if you want to or if you don't want to sustain that addiction, that becomes almost your main drive, your main purpose every day. So for me, it got to a point where I was at a crossroads, really, with my life where, okay, do I commit to this life that I'm going down and just accept that, right, I'm going to be an active addiction for my life and I'm just going to have to battle that. I built my career essentially on addiction. I built my career on, if I'm going to do this much fucked up shit, I've got to be this successful so I can get away with it. And
that's what a lot of people don't always see, that you can be extremely high functioning and still have all this going on.
Oh, yeah. I think if you'll ask loads of people, they will say, I had no idea. I had no idea. Yeah, you came into work every day. Oh, you looked fine. Yeah, because I got up in the morning, I hadn't slept, and I had a bottle of Diorite, I had eye drops, I made sure I have a cold shower, and I had a full routine, and I'd take saunas all the time to clear my nose out. So I did all this stuff. So you go through this whole process to make sure no one finds out. Oh, and by the way, also, you have to be the most pathological liar to sustain it. You become the mass manipulator and the world's best liar. So yeah, people probably would say, oh no, I had no idea. Well, that was the purpose, really.
Makes sense. And would you say, like, at the root of addiction, that is the most powerful thing that really fucks with people? Like the fact that they do have to become that type of person. The fact that they do have to become, as you say, pathological liars, or wear that mask and put more energy in almost like hiding this part of themselves.
Yeah, but it's a funny thing because you sort of become that without knowing or without having a choice. You become that because there is no choice in it. It's a disease, and it's sort of you don't know you're this pathological liar. You don't know you're that person until you do get to a point where you go, I can't continue this anymore. And then, if you're fortunate enough to be in a position where you can look to recover, then you start to look back and go, well, I've done some fucked up shit, and I've lied to a lot of people, and then you got to go and look at making amends on that. But the process, you have no control over it. So whether it's easy or not, no, none of it's easy, but you have no control over it. So it's not like you can bow out of it anyway.
Yeah,
you're just basically going along for the ride.
Yeah, I think the hardest part of it, or I can only imagine this because it's just an observation, but I think shame and guilt
Mm.
is like an anchor for the lowest frequency of thought
Mm-hmm.
that you can have for other people or for yourself.
Yeah.
So do you feel like that plays a role in how long the addiction stays there, or do you feel like it plays a role maybe in how the addiction manifests?
Well, I think for me, I was numb for 10 years. So I was literally numb. So I wouldn't feel so much. I would have little moments where I'd feel the guilt or I'd feel the stress of life, of all the issues that were coming with the life I was living. But then they'd be numbed for a period of time. But afterwards, yeah, that's one of the toughest things. When you suddenly go, I can't live this life anymore, and you try and change it, suddenly you've got 10 years worth of guilt, shame, and that doesn't go away. And the only way to get through that is face it. So
Yeah.
you've got to face huge amount. And that guilt is crippling. Like it really is. Like that, the first time I tried to go sober, it was without a doubt the guilt that I hadn't found the right coping mechanisms. I hadn't found a new antidote for my disease. Now I have. Back then I hadn't. So there was other elements to it, but the guilt was a huge thing. The guilt that I felt towards family members, what I had done. As soon as I got out of that environment, which was I was geographically and moved back up here, straight away, straight back into it. First night I was here, coke. First night.
Do you feel like the fact that it is so taboo to actually have a coke addiction because of the way it's portrayed in like the media, the way it's portrayed in movies. Sometimes in movies it's even glorified, right? So do you feel like the fact that it's turned into something that can be perceived as very, very taboo, do you feel like that has an impact on things? Because, for example, I think it could almost be something that you use as a numbing factor. Say, oh, well, people do it in movies, so that's why I don't really have to pay as much attention to it as what I should. So I can definitely picture a lot of people using the fact that it is taboo as almost like a numbing factor, because people do that with weed, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah. Do you know what? I think there is a taboo behind it, but also there's this weird acceptance with it. But people don't know what they're accepting. Like, do you know how many people do you see, especially our generation? Suddenly you've got guys that maybe a year ago, they were up all weekends, sniffing till their noses couldn't any longer. Yeah. Now they're hiking up mountains. Yeah. Like this, like there's a common theme. You're seeing all these people. You're seeing all these people who used to be proper wrong-uns. Suddenly now they're going off and they're doing Ironmans, things like that. Me, myself, I've cross-addicted into fitness. So I don't think there is a taboo behind it, but that only comes into play, I think, when someone realizes they're an addict. I think prior to that, there's huge amounts of people who are living this socially acceptable addict life, be it with booze or whatever.
Because it's funny with coke versus weed. With weed, it's almost like people make a joke of the fact that you can start your day with weed and carry on as normal.
That's bullshit, by the way. Yeah, honestly, mate, I did that when I was doing architecture at uni. That was my thing. This will make me more creative. Yeah, this will make me more creative. This will help with my work. No, it won't. It means I get to smoke when I wake up in the morning. I get to go into uni, acting like I'm more creative. Come home and smoke, and again, you're just numbing it. It doesn't make you more creative. It makes you lazy.
Yeah, I think you numb what you know you need to really deal with. But sometimes people don't get the help and support that they need with the things that they are already dealing with. So that's where these coping mechanisms come in. But I do think it's a valid point. Like sometimes it gets to a point where you're just making an excuse for yourself almost. I think what is interesting about weed in comparison to like coke is obviously with weed, you do kind of like slow down
Mhm.
You know what I mean? You do kind of like
Yeah.
slow down. So I think that's where the whole argument comes from. Like most
Yeah.
people are just so
Mhm.
in the fast lane and just dealing with life at such a fast pace
Yeah.
that they use that as a coping mechanism. So I get it and I understand it, but
Yeah, I mean, I think on that, so just to be clear as well, I think when it comes to things like weed especially, um, I don't actually have a problem with it. Like for me, there's a lot of medicinal benefits to it, and it can someone can use weed and smoke whenever they want. It might not be an issue. Same with alcohol, same with coke, same with whatever. It just depends on the person. It's just for me, I know that I have no moderation.
Yeah.
I have to be full sobriety.
well, this is it. Like, I think you have to be mindful of the fact that you might have like a genetic inclination to act and behave in a certain way once you start having that substance on a frequent basis.
Yeah, you got to check yourself sometimes. But I remember. So the first day I was in rehab, right? I remember they said to me, this one of the nurses that worked there. She was like, "Look, don't worry." She's like, "You only got to change one thing." And I was desperate. I was like, "What's that?" She was like, "Everything." I was like, "Great, okay, cool. All right, here we go." And she's right. But that was where I was at. I was at that point where
I love that.
yeah, it's real, and it was. But that's where I was at. I was so hopeless. I was so hopeless. I was so willing for someone just to say, they could have told me to do anything if it meant that I would not touch another drug again in my life, and I'd have done it. That was where I was at. But I had to get to that point. And some people, so actually, I was Steve, I was watching something he did the other day, right? And he was saying, we're talking about addicts, we're the fortunate ones. We're the ones who have got to a point where we've gone, I can't do this anymore. Imagine the amount of people whose addictions maybe are slightly more copable or manageable rather, but they go their whole life in that addiction, not achieving their potential because it never gets quite bad enough for them to go, oh, I can't do this anymore.
Absolutely.
Like that's how many people are in that situation.
Yeah, 100%. It's like, for example, I had a moment where I actually experienced very severe psychosis.
Yeah.
And obviously when you get at that point, then you'll see, all right, this is what this can do. This is what it can cause. But it's actually more dangerous to avoid those extremities because then you never actually know what this stuff can do. The best example of this is alcohol. Because you generally do avoid the extremities. Like if you go out, you go for a drink, you have a laugh, you enjoy yourself, you have a great time. Not only do you associate a whole bunch of positive emotions with that experience, but you dodge the extremities. You don't turn into an alcoholic.
When you say dodge the extremities?
So like one of the extremities of having an alcohol addiction is you lose everything.
Yeah.
You lose everything and you lose everyone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or your life is just so chaotic that you can't bounce back from that chaos. So that's an extremity. And you could say the same thing for cocaine, you could say the same thing for weed. But if you spend so much time avoiding those extremities in spite of the fact that you are still taking that substance, that is more dangerous because it's not building your awareness. If anything, it's maybe even numbing your awareness because you almost get to a point where it's like, I can have this be a part of my lifestyle and still function. Yeah.
Or I mean, just to turn that question, it might not be a case of I can have this and still function. It's a case of, right, this is a part of me. Can I find a way to still go on with my life whilst having this drag me back? And I think a lot of people do, in every industry I've been in, in sales roles, sort of high pressure, high stress environments. I was, I remember that I had a 3-month period at this company I was working at, and one guy introduced me to Xanax. He's like, "You're stressed? Take one of these." Mate, I had 3 of the best sales months I've ever had. I can remember about 20% of it
That's
because all your
crazy.
inhibitions are gone. All your inhibitions are gone. Like I would get in my car to drive into work, and then suddenly I'm in work. I don't remember driving in, and I would come in. I'd have closed a big deal, and I'd ask someone, "Is that deal closed?" Yeah, you closed that 2 days ago. Like it's crazy, and it's. Do you know what? I wouldn't say I feel embarrassment for where I was at because trust me, if I look back and think of everything I did and I took the time to sit with it and let it embarrass me, like that would be all consuming because I did a lot of stupid shit.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's important though for people to see and to realize like really how high functioning you can actually be whilst all of this is going on.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know, I guarantee people have almost like a predisposition to believe that if somebody does smoke weed or they do drink a lot or they do take coke or whatever, that they must not have their shit together, like in any way. But it can actually be quite the opposite. In one or two areas of that person's life, they could have all their shit together, but it's not about that. It's about the area of their life where they don't, and what hold or grip that is got on them.
Yeah, that's the point, right? Because that will always dictate the other areas. They might be managing the other areas, but it's from my experience, you're just one situation away from the whole deck of cards falling. And that's what I was always just trying to, you know, put tape on these deck of cards. As one would fall, I'd quickly put it back up. But I was always so close. And you're talking about psychosis. My cocaine psychosis, geez. Like I was hearing people, I was seeing stuff. I'd be like poking through the curtains in the house, looking out for people, thinking people were there. I remember I was at this house and my mate thought someone was coming, and this guy was a big lad. He jumps over this wall, and I've never seen a guy. He folded into a deck chair, just disappeared. Like this guy was gone. And these were daily situations where we'd sit there and be like, this crazy shit's gonna happen, and it would all just be in our heads. Because if you do it enough, you start to lose the plot. Yeah. But you know, it can get better.
Yeah. And it's just crazy to see what your life can look like when it does get to that point, though. Because you're right, there is a lot of denial that can take place, and I think that's why it's so hard for people to confront the monster that is the addiction. You know what I mean? Because you have to take all of that denial, realize how strongly associated that denial is with your ego to some sense. And then try and go the opposite route. Try and go down the route of building your awareness of the situation, of yourself, of the substance. And you know, that's a lot of awareness to build. If
it's scary. Because if your situation's anything like mine was, the further you get into it, you start to block out the idea of, is this causing me health issues? What damage am I doing to my body? So it gets to a point where you don't want to know the answers. But that's where I was at. You know, I remember I learned that basically my dopamine levels had dropped to below 5% of what a normal person has. And it would take at least a year for them to get back to some natural level. I was pretty fortunate. Yeah, no real, like, there's no long-term issues with that I'm dealing with. It was all just right. Just, you know, get a good routine, have structure. Fitness is nigh on everything for me now. You know, but that's you know, that's what I've put my addictive personality into. That's what it's into now, and I use it in a positive way. But going back to what you were saying about the ego, the ego, the view you have of or I had of myself was so blown out of proportion, and nothing is your fault. Like I'm saying, like I would do the most stupid shit, and it was someone else's fault every single time. Like there was nothing that I could never take accountability. But I thought I was the most accountable person, and I would tell people I was the most accountable person. I couldn't have been further from that.
Yeah. I think it's more that you would have been, because obviously I've got context like outside looking in, obviously. Known that you've been through all of this. From when I've engaged with you throughout this experience, I know that if I was to, lay it on you and be like, look, bro, like this is how things are, this is what it is, I think you would have been accepting to the idea of what I was trying to get across to you. But it's not the denial that takes place in front of other people. It's the denial that takes place when you go away. Because it's like you said earlier, if you're a pathological liar,
that's what I was going to say.
The situation in front of you when and how it presents itself is one thing. But how you lie to yourself, when there's nobody around, that's a whole different ballgame.
But you're right.
You know what I mean?
If let's say you called me out a couple of years ago, like, because there was 100% times years ago when I trained with you that I was probably on coke. Like, come in, I was probably. He'll hate that. He'll hate that one, without a doubt.
But for me, when I hear that though, like, it's one of them ones where, as a coach, right?
Yeah.
You have to be mindful that people do come to you with certain coping mechanisms. And they're there. They're there, but you can't confront people immediately on those coping mechanisms. Depending on what your experience is. So, for example, if I'm not a psychiatrist, if I'm not a psychotherapist, I can't turn around and highlight somebody's coping mechanism, even if it is substance related, because I would then have to also consider what I believe has caused that. Now, I might know it's trauma. I might know it's this experience and that experience and grief and this and that. But I also have to be mindful of the fact that I've got to have that relationship with that person. I've got to have that rapport with that person. But I also need the credibility to turn around and diagnose the issue. And diagnose what I believe a potential solution is. So that's why it's like I probably knew, but I wouldn't be.
But you were also a safe space for me. So I think you probably saw a bit of that as well. Like any time, so for a bit of context, over the last sort of 7-8 years, there's been 3 occasions where I've reached out to you completely out of the blue. Man, I spoke to you for a couple of years. I said, this is where I'm at. I want to come train. Yes, mate. Get in. Let's do it. And there was consistent things. I'd always train hard when I was there, but there was inconsistencies with everything else over those years. And I remember you saying to me once, something didn't add up. And I was like, no, it definitely didn't add up. And that was it. And then, when I messaged you saying, look, this is what I'm doing. I'm putting myself in rehab. And mate, how you were about that and how you've said since then, it meant a lot. And that gave me accountability to follow through with that. And then when I came back this time, we got down to it. We've been consistent. I've been consistent.
Yeah, I think for me, I was just hoping and praying that you took it as seriously as you could. Like, because at the time I was thinking these places, they're not cheap. I was like, $15. I was like, this shit ain't cheap. This shit ain't cheap, So I'm like, for one, straight away, like, there's gonna be a lot of money that's just gonna go down the drain if we don't,
for sure,
do what we need to do here. So that was at the front of my mind. But like on the flip side, I was just like thinking about your potential, because what I'm about to say is a bit of a blessing and a curse, but when I meet people, I see their potential first before anything else. It's a blessing because they might not see that. So you can have a beautiful conversation with that person about all the things that they could do and could achieve. But it's also a curse because it's the person that needs to be ready.
For sure.
Not necessarily. You can't bend and twist somebody's arm to fulfill their
Oh, you
fullest
can't do
potential.
anything about it.
Yeah.
You could,
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
But that's the reason why I was like hoping and praying you took it as seriously as you could, because I was like, this will be a huge prerequisite for you executing against your fullest potential later down the line.
Oh,
If
100%.
you face this head on, it's a huge prerequisite for your full potential.
That's the way I saw it, in a way. By the way, thank you. But yeah, no, but that's the way I saw it. I was sick of watching, of 6 months going by and watching anyone that I considered or I looked up to in my life being 6 months further on. And then even people that I thought I was miles ahead of, suddenly they were ahead of me in life. And I was sick of that happening every 6 months, again.
Do you ever get worried that people might not believe you when you say that you're clean?
What, mate? What can I do about it? You think I've lied for 10 years? You think someone who hasn't seen me since I've got sober is going to go, yeah, I believe you?
Yeah,
mate. No, I could if I was worried about that. We talked about guilt and shame, right? That would all come back.
Yeah,
I have no control over it. But also, like, if I have told someone lies consistently, it's going to take more than me going, hey, yeah, look, I do the 12-step program now, I'm all good. They're going to be like, no, that's bullshit. So no, because one thing I will say is it is really nice when people start believing in you again. People start coming to you for help, and yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things I remember. There's a couple occasions, and it was one that was with my sister's husband, who I've always looked up to because he's always had his shit together. And I remember we were talking about something. I tried to give advice. I remember looking at him and going, "You could not care less about what I'm saying because you don't believe it," and that was so real with me, and that hurt. And I remember seeing it with other people. I'm generally trying to help them, and they're like, "You've got no credibility," and they haven't got to say it. You see it.
Yeah.
So that was one of the biggest things for me was I want to be the person I know I can be. And I've always had, I don't think it's, look, some people are going to say it was arrogance. Maybe it was at times, but I call it self-confidence. I've always thought I can achieve a lot, but I plateaued. In fact, I was probably my success was going down, and I had to stop it. I had to have a circuit break from life. I had to pull myself fully out of society for a month, which, by the way, I think 90% of the population could benefit from.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, and have that reset, and I did.
Yeah.
You know,
I think the scariest part about it for me is obviously, you see, when you care about somebody and you've got love for them, obviously you want the best for them, but also to some degree you're always going to have that thing especially when you're good at like analyzing a situation for what it could be, you're always going to have that thing in the back of your mind, like, but Alex is really smart, but Alex is really clever, but Alex is really intelligent. So who's to say he couldn't keep this and this from me? Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So that's the way I look at it now. I'm like, okay, I have to have trust in you, that you are committing yourself to this process. Because at the end of the day, you have to take people as they are, not as they could be. You know, so if I think about it from that context, I'm just, if you tell me that you're doing anything and everything within your power to stay on a certain path, all I can do is just trust that. All I can do is just believe that, and just hope for the best to some degree. And I'm sure that's probably a similar mindset that a lot of people have. But
I agree. I think it is completely. My words meant nothing. It was just, it had to be consistently over a period of time showing people. That was it.
But I know how that feels to be that person, though, right? Because this is the thing. Everyone preaches honesty, but no one's wanting to be honest with themselves, right? So, what that actually does is we are liars. We are very good liars, but we never want to admit how effective we are at lying.
I don't think most people know, mate. I think most people, it's pre-programmed into them. I was thinking about this just the other day. There's very few people that probably, when you spend time with them, they don't lie to you about it could be some mundane shit, but you'll look at someone and they're lying to you. You know, like I was thinking about it at work the other day. Like,
bro, to be honest, if you meet someone, it's funny. The irony is I started that sentence with "to be honest." watch me tell a bunch of lies. If you met somebody who's extremely honest about everything, trust me, it's not going to be very pleasant to be around them, you know.
No. Oh, that's true.
It's not going to be very pleasant. So it's actually, lying is actually in some context a prerequisite for you to function in society around certain individuals.
100%.
Do you know what I mean?
Mate, people don't like someone who tells the truth about everything. You're suddenly unpopular, mate.
Yeah.
If you're the person that says things to people, like, look, I'll say, we had a conversation the other day, and I said something which straight away you got your back up. Well, not got your back up, but you weren't used to that response.
Yeah.
But I said it because I care about you.
Yeah.
And I wanted to give you that other view. But with most people, don't waste your time. Just agree with them. Because if you know what they're saying isn't true, or if you know that you can't change the way they're thinking, I completely agree with you. Have a great day. Don't waste your time with them.
That was one of the biggest things that I learned, like, on my journey in terms of communicating with people around me. I think you should always be honest with yourself.
That's hard. I agree with you, but that's hard. That's hard to do. It's so much easier to not do that.
It is. I think you should always be honest with yourself because the prerequisite for everything that you're going to do and achieve in life is self-awareness.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So things get really muddy. Things get really murky when you don't actually know who you are because of how long you've been lying to yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Some people have had that experience, but a lot of people have not had that experience to not actually know who they are because of how long they've been lying to themselves. Because it's like it's a delusions feed themselves, right?
Yeah, but I would go as far as to say that again, a lot of people are in that, but they haven't got to the point where they've come full circle and realize that's what they're doing. I think a lot of people, we've talked before about masks. Everyone has them on. When you meet someone who's authentic, you can tell. And when someone's fully, this is me, like that shows so clearly. It's because they have this almost, I don't give a fuck. Because you get to a point where you know your value, you know yourself. But the reason you get, at least from my experience, you get to that point where I don't give a fuck is because, and when I say that, I mean, I'll say it from my experience. In order to go through my recovery, I had to accept that I was always pretty open about my addiction. So there was a lot of shit that people knew. And I knew there was a lot of stuff that people would probably find out about. I had to accept that. I had to accept that, I make a joke of the whole, like, I'll make a joke of the situation. I'll make a joke of the stories because it's not who I am now, but it's what I did.
What do you think is more hard work, to be inauthentic or to be authentic?
To be inauthentic is easier for in a certain way. It depends on the person. For me, it was easier to be inauthentic day to day, but in reality, it was crippling me. So actually that's a weird one because it was definitely easier to do that every day because it was an easier choice to make. It was an easier choice to wake up and do the easy option. But the ironic thing is that was incredibly hard because my mental health was dreadful. I had undiagnosed ADHD, which I didn't know who I was. I couldn't sustain relationships. I felt so out of place. And I couldn't put my finger on it until I realized that I was 30 years old and I had no idea who I was. No idea.
I think authenticity, it comes back to what we were saying earlier, but I think it really just boils down to your ability to live up to your core values, right? Because you
Yeah.
decide what your core values are, but the problem is
Yeah.
most people don't even know what their core values are. So when they
Mm.
say, I wish I could be more authentic and true to myself, they don't even know what that means, because it's like, if you
No,
don't know what your core values are, you don't know what you're living up to.
I agree
know
with
what I mean?
that, but I also think a lot of people know if they don't know what their core values are, they know what they want to be and they know where they want to be.
Mm.
And I was one of those people as well. For the last 6 months of my life, that is the first time in my life that I have been disciplined, fully disciplined for a period of time. And I've seen every area of my life improve drastically. And it's probably I'd say it was the first 6 months that I can now look back and go, wow, I've really developed. I've come on a lot in my relationships with friends, family, colleagues, my career, my fitness, my mental health, just every aspect of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't easy, and it's still not easy. Is my life considerably and infinitely better today? Yeah, 100%. Am I happier? Do I feel content most of the time? Yeah. But I have to show up for myself every day. I have to live life on life's terms. That's not easy.
Yeah.
I've got rid of the way I used to escape life. I don't have that anymore. So I had to find healthier replacements for that. So going to the gym, that will do it for me. Movement, just move. You know, if you feel stuck, just start moving. Whatever it is you're doing, and to have that routine. So, you know, some people call me boring now. I go to bed between 9:30. I wake up 4:30, 5, and I have my daily structure. Without that daily structure, that'll be the first thing to go, will be my... So if we're talking about sort of, you know, just going a little bit off topic, but the idea of a relapse, a relapse won't be me sniffing a line of cocaine. The relapse will happen weeks before that. When I decide to wake up and go, no, I'm not going to get up at 4:30 today. I'm not going to go for a run. No, I'm not going to go to the gym this morning. I'm not going to do my meditation this morning. That's the relapse. And then it's 2 weeks later, that's the result of it. So for me, yeah, you can do this.
It's like manipulating where you put your attention, basically.
It's deviating from what works. You know, I'm still so new into this, but as I go on, it's evolving. My daily routine, I can maybe a bit more flexible. I'm changing it, you know, as also my circle of people is improving now. Well, actually, my circle of people is completely different. I mean, 90% of the people I had around me weren't good for me, so they were gone.
Do you feel like somebody's intellectual capacity is a prerequisite for them being in a position where they're dealing with an addiction?
Yeah, I've thought this, and I wondered if I was sounding really egotistical, even to myself when I was thinking about it. Because when you think about this, I guess what you're saying is, well, I'm intelligent, so that's it. But
well,
yes.
Either end of the spectrum, really.
Yeah. Well, no, but that's true. Yeah.
You gotta be one dumb motherfucker, try some crack, and then
yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree, mate. I agree. I think the more you know, the more you open yourself up to your shortcomings. Because the more you know, the more you realize your potential. But just because you realize your potential doesn't mean you're prepared to do what it takes to achieve it. And that's tough. Sitting there going, I could be doing that, but I didn't put the work in. That will drive you to addiction for sure. You know? Whereas the other end of the spectrum, I imagine, I mean, look, addiction doesn't pick and choose people. Addiction will affect anyone. That's one of the things I've realized in my recovery. You know, when you go into recovery and you go into the meetings, you go in thinking, I am the no one's done more crazy shit than me. And you go in the meetings and you find out, well, yeah, probably that wasn't the case. But also it doesn't pick, you know, there's all different types of people and fantastic, beautiful people.
Do you think it's more the person or the person's environment?
Irrelevant. It's a disease. It will manifest itself in whatever way, but one thing it will 100% do is it will manifest itself. For me, you know, I look back and mine started in my mid-teens.
Do you think we all have an addiction?
No, I don't. I don't think everyone has the disease of addiction. I think people and the way society's geared up now, I think it's easy for people to develop addictions, to social media, to gaming. So yes, I can't really relate to those types because that probably stems from. Actually, no, I guess I can relate because I suppose that still stems from some form of trauma, mental health, and it's an escape. So yes, I suppose you can develop an addiction. I think it's probably easier now to do this, and for at least from my experience, it comes from it's an escape, not feeling comfortable in your own skin.
Is there such thing as a healthy addiction?
Well, I have to believe that. I have to. You know. So yes, I do think there is.
Because I think that's what a lot of people in society are dealing with, right? They know they're addicted to something, but they just want to understand whether or not that addiction that they have is healthy or not, because that's the big elephant in the room. It's like, I'm addicted to something, but is this something that is healthy or not?
Well, I mean, healthy or good, different things. I don't know if addiction can ever be healthy, but I would... Anyone who is
lesser of two evils.
Yeah, I mean, look, it got me really far in my career, and it allowed me to be pretty savage and cutthroat because I was not addicted. I became obsessed with those areas. My career now, yes, in a different way. Now it's focused towards you know. I want to now work towards getting myself in the best shape I've ever been in. I would say that's a positive addiction. That's me utilizing the disease I have in a positive way. That's me medicating myself in a positive way. You know, that's how I sustain it now.
Yeah.
But it's always there.
Absolutely. I think probably the easiest way to avoid an addiction is to avoid extremities. I'm saying the easiest way as if it is easy. It's not. But
not easy.
The prerequisite for avoiding it is to avoid extremities, right? Because I've met people who have an addiction to training.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, yeah, that's a healthy addiction. I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Because you go to the gym 7 days a week, twice a day, not only will that eventually start to be counterproductive, but what kind of impact might it have on your social well-being? So not your mental and physical well-being, but your social well-being, because you are a social creature.
Yes. I mean, that's a really good thing to talk about with addiction because, yeah, you can become very reclusive. Or at least for me, that was the pattern I saw. When I was younger, it always was associated with social, going out, spending time with people. As my addiction got stronger, I spent less and less time with people. And when I did spend time with people, it was how quickly can I get out of this situation and go home and do this on my own.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I don't think it matters. But I mean, what you're talking about specifically there, it's the same.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same. You
I
know,
do think it's so fucking unfortunate when people give somebody's new addiction that is actually serving them very well temporarily the title of, oh, this is boring. Oh, this is this. Fuck off, mate. Like, don't give it that title, because at the end of the day, right now, that behavior, those actions, it's serving that individual, and you don't know 100%. What the opposite could look like.
Mate,
you know what I mean?
I've had people openly say to me, some of them joking, some of them not, but I mean, to be fair, fuck them. But what they've said to me is, you were way more fun before. or this new Alex he's not as much fun. It's like, all right, yeah, because I'm not doing the same stuff I used to do what you're doing. But one, I'm gonna beat you in whatever aspect we're working in. If it's business or fitness, I'm gonna beat you now. But two, it's like, all right, that's your opinion. Like, I have no control over that, and it's pretty irrelevant, really. But yeah, oh man, I've had so many people, some in joke, but some people not like the person I've become. That's just a pretty clear sign to me that, all right, probably we're not probably well suited anymore.
I think those are two things that you could call it a pet peeve for me. It's those two titles when people say this is fun and this is boring, because that is so subjective. And if you make it objective, in most cases, what people do is they use society as the anchor. So people say, "Oh, right, this is fun because for most people, or this is boring because for most people, I'm like, I don't give a fuck about most people. I'm saying this is fun for me. This is boring for me, and it is what it is. I think when people start to enforce their idea of what is fun and their idea of what is boring upon other people, it's a problem.
Oh, 100%. Because it's You know, I had someone say to me the other day, they were like, "Oh, I'm so gutted that you ruined drinking for yourself, like that you took it too far." I was like, "Well, hang on." I was like, "Do you think I had a choice in this?" They were like, "Yeah, of course you had a choice." It's like, hold back, because he was a lovely person, and like she's lucky enough and fortunate enough not to understand addiction, but I had no control over that. But I went out for a lovely meal last night with 15 other guys. 4 of the guys there were fully sober. You know, it's becoming more normal.
Yeah,
it's way more accepted.
Yeah.
And I was sat next to a guy who is a really good mate of mine, lovely guy, and he was sniffing his head away. You know, but I had no issue with that. You know, I was fine. Don't get me wrong. When the food was done, did I leave? Yep. Did I give him a lift home? No, I didn't. You know, but I can do those things now. But I pick my times. My times. My time's more valuable in that respect now.
Which is smart, because then you can mingle. You can still be sociable with people who have opposing values and beliefs to what you do, but you also don't feel judged, and they're not judging you. You know what I mean? Which is good.
Oh yeah, these people aren't. Yeah, but also I think on that note, you see people when you start to go on a path of self-development, self-improvement. It feels really good when you start seeing people around you taking that on board. My mum's doing Pilates now. Like, mate, my mum would never have done that in a million years. You know, and she's taking it. You know, she's looking at that self-development herself. And I've seen other people in my life do the same. That feels good. You know, it feels really good when people start coming to you. And I think on that, you know, it is, and for anyone out there who is maybe suffering with addiction, it does get a lot better. Infinitely better. Is it easy every day? No, it's not. Because you got to deal with life stresses and you got to deal with it head on. That's not easy. Like, you literally, when a problem arises, whether it's you get an invoice in, or you get a parking ticket, you pay it then. You can't just let that sit, let that fester. If you've got a problem and you know it's going to become a problem, even if it hasn't become a problem yet, deal with it then. So that's tougher. You have a really stressful day. You can't just go out and have a few beers with your mates. So you find new ways. So it's not that easy, but it's so much better.
Yeah, 100%. Just know what you're up against, man. Like,
that's
build awareness. Build awareness.
It depends what you want, though. If your goals are bigger, then it's never going to be easy, and it gets uncomfortable before it gets better. And then it gets uncomfortable again, and it gets better. But that's the pattern. That's the pattern of anyone successful. You have to get used to being uncomfortable. And I think that's probably why there's a lot of people who are just stuck in their addiction, because in order to face it, it's going to be uncomfortable. You've got to admit your problems. You've got to hold your hands up and go, yeah, I need help here. And you're probably, for me, I was worried that everything in my life was going to fall down. The ironic thing was it already was. Like, I was just trying to hold it together.
What would be your advice to somebody who doesn't have access to these resources? Because, I wouldn't say it's an excuse, but resource management.
No, it's an excuse.
Yeah, it's something that people do say, oh, I would love to overcome my addiction, but I don't have access to this, or I don't have access to this, or I don't have access to that. So,
Doesn't matter. None of that matters. Like, there's two ways to answer this. You can't make someone. Honestly, because I've been there. If you don't want to, if you're not prepared to accept that you are hopeless, people, I could tell you, like you said earlier, you could have told me something, and I would have said everything you wanted to hear, and then I would have gone and just done exactly what I was doing before. So my advice is, if someone's in that position where they are prepared to admit they are hopeless with their addiction, get yourself to a meeting, whatever it is. There's meetings for everything now. There's Cocaine Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Sex Addicts Anonymous. Whatever you need, there's meetings for that. That's the first step. And it gets better as soon as you get to them. It gets tough because it's uncomfortable, but that's the main piece of advice. But if someone won't do that, there's only so much you can do. Someone has to be willing. If someone's willing, I will go out my way to help that person. But it's get to meetings and it's ask for help. That's the first bit. Ask for help. Reach out. And also, the other reality, people already know. If you're one of those people that is in that position, trust me, the people around you, the people that care about you, they know you got a problem. As soon as you tell them, they're not going to be surprised. That's probably the main thing as well.
Makes sense. Yeah. And I think that's an interesting part about it all, because it does come back to self-denial a little bit. Like, you might be in denial of the fact that other people know what you're actually dealing with and what's
that's on me.
and what's actually really going on. I think with the thing that I find interesting about addiction is it does seem as though the prerequisite for it being such a monster that it is more to do with the substances than the people. I mean, your nature magnifies this situation. It amplifies the situation. But it's how that substance, like,
but it doesn't. See, but that's a really good question, because me as an addict, I see that the whole opposite. If that's why I don't drink. Drink wasn't really my problem. It was cocaine. But I'm not going to drink now because that will quickly become my problem. You know, that's why I've gone into fitness, food, binge eating, not eating enough, eating disorders. It could cross to anything. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter. You know, I've had stages in my life where it was different drugs and it goes through.
It's more to do with your nature, you would say.
Oh, 100%.
And would you say it's more to do with having an addictive nature or an obsessive nature? Because this is something that we were talking about earlier, because obviously a lot of people almost say the latter with pride. Like, I have an obsession. I have an obsessive nature about me. I get obsessed about this, and this. And it does seem generally to have much less negative connotations than saying, oh, I have an addiction. So,
I mean, it depends what you're obsessed with, but I think it's because the connotations with the word obsession I guess they can be negative as well. Most of the time they will be positive. If you're obsessed with something, you're obsessed with achieving a goal, then that's positive. You won't tend to hear someone say, I'm addicted to achieving that goal. And I think it's because the connotations are different. So I would say no, they are different. But you can put it towards something positive. But if you're aware that it's an addiction, you're probably going to be far enough along a point that you're managing it. And you have a way of medicating it.
It's almost like an addiction is something that you can't control, but obsession is something that you don't want to. You're content with the fact that you can't control it.
I'll tell you an analogy that I got told a while ago. So you're stood in front of two doors, right? And you open up one door, there's no one behind it. You open up the next door, and a monster jumps out and smashes you over the head, knocks you unconscious. You wake up. You open that door again, same thing happens. I wake up, open the door again, the same thing happens. You wake up again, you open the door, there's no monster. So what do? You go inside and you go looking for the monster because you're so used to that happening. So you go look, gets to a point where you're just looking for the problem. You just do this again. You just keep getting battered and battered and battered, beaten down, but you keep doing it to a point where that's all you know. So is addiction the same as obsession? No.
They have similarities, but it's not quite the same thing.
Yes, they have similar. Yeah, if it's a positive, then yeah, they have similarities for sure. But yeah,
Roger that, bro. Roger that. I think we'll wrap it up there.
100%. Nice one, brother.
Love that, bro.